Why the person you fell in love with starts to annoy you. Hello, I am Dr. K. Paul Stoller. Have you ever noticed something strange about relationships? The very traits that once attracted you to someone often become the same traits that irritate you a few years later. The spontaneous person you adored becomes irresponsible. The confident person you admired becomes arrogant. The relaxed partner becomes lazy. The driven partner becomes obsessive. What changed? Did they change, or did your perception change? At the beginning of a romantic relationship, we don't actually see the other person clearly. What we see is partly a projection. Our minds fill in the unknown parts of the other person with qualities we hope they have. Psychologists call this idealization. During this phase, our brain chemistry works in a very specific way. Dopamine floods the system. Novelty stimulates excitement. And our perception becomes selective. We notice the things we like and unconsciously filter out the things we don't. That early stage of love can feel intoxicating, but the person we fall in love with is partly a story our mind creates, a version of the other person shaped by hope, desire, and imagination. And as long as the relationship is new, that story holds together. But something inevitable eventually happens: time. As we spend more time with someone, the mystery disappears. You see them when they're tired, when they're frustrated, when they're inconsistent. You see their habits, their contradictions, their imperfections, and suddenly it becomes very difficult to romanticize a flesh and blood human being, because they are no longer a symbol of possibility. They are simply a person. This is the moment when many couples experience confusion. Because the same traits that once seemed attractive now appear irritating. The person didn't necessarily change. What changed was the lens through which you see them. Early attraction highlights strengths, familiarity exposes limitations. And when the illusion fades, the relationship enters a new phase. Sometimes people describe this moment as betrayal. They feel as though the person they fell in love with has disappeared, but often the partner didn't deceive them at all. What disappeared was the idealized version of the partner that existed in their mind. The fantasy dissolved. Reality took its place. This leads to an interesting question. How deeply can we love someone we barely know? In the early stages of romance, love can feel intense, but it is often built on very limited knowledge. In that sense, early love can be powerful, but also fragile, because it depends on illusion. Real love, if it develops, comes later, after the illusions fade, after the imperfections are visible, after the mystery disappears, and the person is still chosen. At this stage, relationships tend to go one of two ways. Some couples separate. They search again for the intoxicating early stage with someone new. Others move into something deeper. The relationship becomes less about fantasy and more about acceptance.
Less about projection.
And more about understanding. The paradox of love is this: the illusion stage makes falling in love possible, but the collapse of that illusion determines whether love becomes real. Because true intimacy doesn't begin when we see someone as perfect. It begins when we see them clearly and choose them anyway. Romance begins with illusion. Love begins when illusion ends.